What did the weird kid do to earn that reputation? Do a countdown to his farts like they were a ducking moon launch. I was the president of an improv club at my high school. The weird kid was a member. Now, remember that episode of The Office when Michael would interrupt every improv scene as a cop? It was like that. Except this kid always had an evil dark magic theme. Characters in the scenes turned out to be his evil brother from the Dark Outlands. Imaginary props would turn into mythic swords formed from shadows. But this kid was so desperately unpopular. No one had the heart to kick him out of the club. He was very into the fantasy of war games. He would get super excited when anyone would play along with him. We had over 5,000 students in the school and many people knew about him and would pretend to shoot at him for a laugh due to his antics. It all had to stop when someone pretended to shoot him with a bazooka and he jumped backwards down a flight of stairs from the explosion. Someone who is still unknown ran through the school with nothing on but a Spider-Man mask. He ran down the longest hallway we had, a quarter mile long, willy flopping in the wind, and no teacher or monitor could stop his majestic run. Raised his hand, and when the teacher called on him to answer his question, he started singing Frère Jacques. Wore the same blue dress every single day to school. Sat in the hall by herself during all class parties. I knew she was a Jehovah's Witness, but it wasn't till I was older that I understood what that meant, and how isolating it must have been for her as an 8-year-old, and up, the only one in a tiny farm town, with nobody even wanting to sit by her on the bus. I still feel it in my gut when I think about her from time to time. 5 decades later, she never did anything to any of us. Sorry, Ramona. He brought a live lobster to a middle school dance and let it go on the dance floor during the dance. Wasn't even a question of who would have done this. It was Nate. Nate did it. When we were about 15, Harrison, we were all addressed by our surnames, decided one day to wrap his D in adhesive tape during a biology lesson. I can't remember why, nor how he managed to remove it, but I was impressed. He also held the record for stabbing into the desk between each finger of his outstretched hand with a compass, a very sharp point, as fast as possible. Despite hitting a finger at least once, he later became a distinguished surgeon. He thought he was a robot. Often you'd find him in the halls alone talking to electronics about destroying the human race or having a conversation with a locker. A girl in my year at school told us that she has a ghost in her bedroom and it told her that if she didn't brush her teeth it would burn her house down. Another girl said she wanted to have sex with our headmaster but she was like 7 at the time, and she used to scratch people in the face like a cat. I held the door open for her once and she flipped me off and called me a ducking itch. He would go around asking people if you knew an alien that looked like X, Y, Z, and you really loved them, would you have sex with the alien? Double quote. Alien description changed a lot from question to question, and if you answered him he would keep asking the questions with different types of aliens. Key point being that you always shared an emotional connection with the alien. Poor kid was just trying to sort out his own alien fetish, I think. Edit. No kink shaming. Cut himself in class. Waited for the blood to congeal a bit then ate it. Just writing that made me gag. Years later he got arrested for stabbing someone. The weird kid in my year started out as basically a meme. He was odd, socially isolated, talked to himself a little, nerdy, terrible at sports, cannon fodder for the popular crowd. We were, and still are, friends though. Freshman year a joke starts going around that he should be prom king. Nobody takes it too seriously but it's considered funny. French teacher picks it up and supports it. 4 years later he's been so heavily memed everyone loves him and he gets elected homecoming king. He would bark like a dog when talked to. He probably had some mental problems but most people just avoided him. He would put on sunglasses and stare at girls' chests. It was obvious. We were freshmen in an urban high school. He made increasingly wild claims like he had a bunch of illegal automatic weapons. He made poison darts and blowguns. His sensei could outrun an arrow fired from a bow and he was learning how to do it. He had a nitro kit in his Trans Am that he used to outrun police. He transferred to another school. The next I heard of him 2 years later he had crashed into a brick wall and died while fleeing the police. The report said he lost control when he engaged his nitro kit. There is this kid who only listens to Megalovania. Worst part is that he blasts it full volume and doesn't bother wearing headphones. So imagine you're in my shoes, taking a piss in the bathroom, and 50% of the time you slowly hear Megalovania getting louder and louder until it echoes into the room, and there is that kid just standing there with his phone out staring at everyone while you fear for your safety. He had a notoriety for wetting his pants at least once a day and was super casual about it. I remember I was behind him in the hall one day when I saw massive turd plop out of his short legs. He looked back at it and just kept on strutting. We didn't really have a weird key, but it was me. Dressed as a pirate every day for 8 years. Legit said he was leaving rural MI to move to the Caribbean and become a pirate. Changed his name to Blackbeard Ryan. He was known for doing a ton of odd it, but the only one I personally saw was when he ate a piece of gum that was stuck to the bottom of a kid's shoe. This was in high school. Set his arm on fire on a school trip to France. Sprayed his arm with deodorant for about a whole minute before getting someone to light it. It wouldn't go out until he used the tap in the bathroom to douse it with water. He ended up with blisters and permanent scarring. So the school trip ends and we go back to school the week after. All of a sudden me and 4 other kids get pulled into a classroom to be questioned by police and the head teacher. He basically told his mum that we did it to him. Obviously this did not stick, as we all had the same story. If I had Facebook I would look him up. See how life is for him nowadays. Edit. Forgot to say deodorant is what he used. Dude would wear a stormtrooper costume and taped an old flip-up phone to his arm and pretend to talk through it. This was an HS. He was particularly odd because he was like a born genius, so he'd often get bored in class and get up to some weird it. Ate a battery in class. Pissed in a bottle on a bus full of 60 kids. Chipped his tooth sucking on a Tajan packet. All his siblings are named the same name, Martin. This was in middle school, 8th grade. Me and the kid weren't really friends but were well acquainted with each other as we had a lot of classes together. One morning, yes early morning, we go to our first class. There were big tables with 2 chairs on each side, so nothing was really separating us. My table was in the back of the room and he sat right next to me. Some time passes and I suddenly hear small but fast movements. I turn to see this kid literally jerking off next to me. And this wasn't any subtle jerk, this was one of those I'm in the zone jerks. I scream and the other 2 across from us realize what's happening and they back away as quick as possible. One just falls out of her chair and starts scurrying to the front of the room. He gets pulled out of class and a few weeks later everyone is calling him the math beta because we were in math class when this happened. Looking back now it was absolutely hilarious. Wearing the same suit to class every day. Was a bit smelly but he was polite so it was whatever. Took a bite of a urinal cake because he was curious. Finger themselves during class, then brought a cake the next day to apologize. She got horny from playing with worms. I wish I was making this up. Pulled out his pubes or armpit hair one by one and ate them. Ate a live lizard while the entire school was hanging out on the football field during a fire drill. In 4th grade this kid brought metal Chinese throwing stars to school and started throwing them around the classroom. He was gone for about a week, then a few weeks after that he pulled out some nunchucks and hit a girl in the face. We didn't see him the rest of the year. 5th grade starts and there he is. It was show and tell and he brought in a small pet turtle. He was in front of class and he took the turtle out and said, "My turtle does tricks. Look, he can break dance." He then put it on its back and spun it like a top. It went flying off the stool onto the hard ground and landed on its shell. He was called Turtle or Turtle Boy the rest of school until he disappeared in junior high. This was in the 80s. Wonder how he turned out. Weird ducker. A girl had developed much earlier than everyone else. She had like double D's and severe acne in grade 6. She used to act out weird scenes from TV shows by herself at recess. She was the type who told everyone she had a BF who had a Porsche, but went to a different school. Again. We were like 12. People made fun of her for the usual things. And she did, but one day things took a dark and strange turn. Some girl named Katie said something to her in line after lunch and she lost it. She smoked Katie in the head with her flute case and then hit some other kid who wasn't saying anything. She then spit chocolate milk all over a teacher who asked what was going on. Everyone was pretty shocked. but then she proceeded to sit down on the ground, started to cry and pissed her pants right there. The ground was kinda sloped away from the school, so the puddle formed and then created like a stream of piss all the way to the field, maybe 15-20 feet. Everyone just stood there in shock at how many things had just happened in the span of 90 seconds. Edit. For those asking what she's doing now, I asked a couple people if anybody knew and I was told that last they had heard, she had a daughter with her partner and seemed happy. He didn't have to do much to make a room feel uncomfortable. I'm pretty sure he was high-functioning autistic, but he was still a weirdo. On a day-to-day basis he would answer questions in class with long tangents. His cough was always like a seal. He brought his 3DS to class, and the teacher was always keeping a watchful eye over what he did on his phone or computer. I mean, he would get into arguments with the teacher about what he was doing with his devices. Even when we switched seats he was always close to the teacher. Nate, I'm just checking my email. Once he was playing music in class and forgot to plug in his headphones. Very clearly and loudly the Game Grumps animated intro played before it was muted, and I kind of felt like a dweeb for knowing what that was, but I would later find out he was caught watching porn in class, hence why teachers had to watch him. Not normal porn either. I'm talking about Pikachu Rule 34. Got caught whacking it in the school bathroom, then later got his D stuck in a shampoo bottle. Guys, if you get your D stuck in a shampoo bottle, and your mom has to take you to the hospital to remedy the situation, you need to keep that to yourselves. There is no teenager in the world who's going to keep that knowledge to themselves. 3rd grade in 2000. Kid puts ranch on his pizza at lunch. Everyone is shocked. 2020 and I do that all the time. Sorry we didn't appreciate you, weird kid. Well, I'd say it was me at first. Basically I just suck at social interaction and, looking back, would let pretty much anything happen to me if it meant at least not being 100% isolated from everyone else. Maybe that's why I am so goddamned submissive now. Anyway, later we got another kid who got expelled from his former school for trying to change his grades within the school system. Apparently security wasn't that great there. That guy was a total nutjob who constantly ranted about how much he hated foreigners and Muslims. Was a total creep on the girls, bragging about driving a girl he knew into a suicide attempt and repeatedly threatened to shoot up the school. I was no longer the weird kid. Well, Dr. Goat Lad carved Requiem into his arm with a pencil. The weird kid at my school always claimed she was a wizard, and when someone spoke to her when she was casting a spell, screaming at the ground, she would turn around and either scream in their face or itch slap them. I was new to the school at the time and I got screamed at cause I was legitimately worried that she might be hurt or something. Dyed her hair jet black. Used a nearly white foundation. Black eyeliner. Hissed at everyone. Little did she know, she wasn't the only one forced into that prep school in hopes that the strict Catholic teachings and a near century of academic excellence turn her into a functional member of society. She may have been the weird kid for all of us prep schoolers. But once you got past that icy facade and eccentric fashion, she was a blast. A little dark and made no secret about being a Wiccan, but she was fun. I went to Parkland a few years back. In my first period we had Nicholas Cruz in our science class. Whenever he was called on, no matter what question, he'd always yell out B as in that's the answer. He sat in the middle of class. One girl kept flirting with him by stabbing him in the back of the head with a pencil while her friend laughs along. He graduated before he committed mass murder. Beat his meat STR8 up in the middle of class. Had a few in my high school. One kid would make pterodactyl noises throughout the school, and he was a little excited about the number 3 specifically. Another was just a little eclectic, but the way he interacted with other kids was a little awkward. He broke his foot one year and had one of those leg scooter things for it. He would race through the halls like an F1 racer. Another kid got expelled for trying to steal a classroom computer. Like the whole thing. Monitor, tower, everything. My ex-girlfriend knew a guy who masturbated during a Civil War movie in class, and he got called some kind of cum pun, but I don't remember it. A guy at my school jacked off under his desk all the time, and had sex in the school a lot, but he wasn't very attractive by any means. His girlfriend for the entire time was the girl who was somehow connected to the Sonic Drive-In a few blocks down, who used to be a wonderful Girl Scout. She also wasn't very pretty, and both of them were the weird kid, but the guy was worse. His name was weird and he asked people to marry him as a joke for maybe 2 years. He asked me multiple times. Anybody else reading this knowing they were the weird kid, looking for stories about themselves? This is going to be narrated. I know it. In high school our weird kid was a guy who was legally blind but could see general shapes and light. He was obsessed with the idea that he would be a truck driver. Constantly made engine noises all the time. He was also grossly sexual towards anyone he thought sounded female. Would feel up girls and say he didn't know because he couldn't see what he was touching. He did that to a couple of my friends. I was nice to him for a while but he kept hitting on me. BC my voice was high and eventually I actively dodged him in the halls. I felt kinda bad for him though. Lots of people would just go silent and still if he approached because he was so creepy. I did some low-level parkour to get away from him once. I think he might have been overcompensating for being blind and I did want to be nice to him. But he also definitely was a low-key sexual predator because how does the school prove the blind kid really is groping them and not accidentally brushing them when he trying to find his way? Dark gothy girl apparently dug up a really old family grave, understood to be an old slave burial, and took a finger bone, which was observed on her necklace. The gravesite was located on a hill in the back of a place everyone drove their four-wheelers and trucks, practically in the middle of the woods. She was already seen leaving the graveyard at like 2 AM by a lot of us when we had bonfires going. Then someone found a plot damaged a few weeks later. The graves were super old and apparently caskets were made cheaply or with bare minimum material. Claimed to be an actual vampire. Claimed he had a black belt after kicking or hitting you from behind. Would try to cast curses on people, like in the middle of class and it loudly. I always told people to leave him alone because he was definitely a school shooter suspect. But one day in the cafeteria his GF, don't even ask about her, and him was sitting there and for whatever reason he decided to take her used fresh tampon and wring it out on top of a cookie. He then proceeded to eat the cookie. We all saw and it was crazy. Ever since then he was known as the Cookie Monster. Rollerbladed all around campus and cut his hair into a blonde mohawk. He also sexually assaulted someone but that wasn't weird, it was just awful. He was quiet at first so me and my friends became friends with him. Months later he confesses his love to one of them and gets rejected. And starts stalking us by finding out where we live and more to the point where we had to get restraining orders on him that he kept breaking. She was obsessed with cats. Everything she had. Folders, sweaters, backpack etc had cats on it. She even would meow at school. She graduated with us then killed her husband a few years later. Jesus Christ. Some of these weird kids aren't weird. They're straight up psychopaths. He would jerk off everywhere and be caught, like all the time. In class, on the football field, in the tuba room, you name it. He also claimed with all seriousness to everybody that he was dating the most popular girl at our school. She was in a long-term relationship with another one of the popular kids so everyone knew he was full of it but he stuck to his guns. He drew POC registered sign mon porn during class. For a few years. There were so many examples but this one stuck out to me. There were twin boys in my high school who were just odd. We were in Spanish class together. And the teacher had this habit of making beeping sounds to get the attention of students who were talking. etc. So one day that's happening and the teacher goes, beep, 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 and one of the twins shouts, fires ZE missiles, crawls under his desk and runs out of the room. I thought it was so funny I about fell out of my chair laughing. It all started in 6th grade. A new kid came to our school and you could tell he was a little off. My friend group. We were being nice and had been nice to him the whole year. Then next year in 7th grade. He tore one of my sweatshirts, my most expensive one, and of course I told one of the lunch aides. They said just stay away from him and I did. So on my way out to recess, he was hiding in the corner and mouthed FKU at me. He was crying cause he thought that he would get in trouble. So the nice girls include him then they try to go make me say sorry. I was on the swings being all gangster then I had to try and say sorry. I just said screw that. So later this kid started threatening me that he would bring a knife to school and stab me. Then at the end of recess, he decided to throw a punch. He wasn't the strongest so it didn't hurt. Now, I was more strong than this kid so it would be an easy fight. However, a good friend stopped me doing anything, which was probably for the best. The school did nothing about this, despite my various reports. So after tensions rise, the kid decides to stab me with a fork at lunch. He got no suspension or none of that and I have no idea why. But yeah, that was the weird kid. TL. Dr. Weird Kid stabbed me at lunch. 8th grade respect retreat. Everyone was a bit mesmerized from all the small team building exercises and motivational speakers. Towards the end, after we all sang We Are the World or Summit, we were asked to come up to mic if anyone had anything to say. A bullied kid comes up and says how he has been seriously debating bringing a gun to school. He was respectfully led away immediately. Bullying is absolutely terrible, but this completely cemented this kid into the weird kid bubble. Just a reminder, this was a couple years after Columbine. We were still afraid of trench coats and JNCO jeans. Edit. Same year as Columbine. We had that horse girl. She always pranced around like a horse. Would snort in surprise. That sort of thing. In grade 5 and 6 she always wanted to play horses. My friends and I told her that was so lame. Then we would go off to play wolves instead. There was a girl in my school that got caught trying to color her entire tongue with a black Sharpie in like 7th grade. It was honestly surreal to witness. The teacher was so confused and just walked her to the principal. A few years later she was expelled for drinking during school on multiple occasions. This one kid all throughout grade school and high school used to grab pens, pencils and try to sit on them in front of everyone whenever the teacher wasn't watching. He'd just hold them with one hand and start to sit on the end. Or just lean over the desk and try to jam them up his poop chute. He always did this weird kinda wheezy laugh when he did it. Even looking away, you can't unsee that it. Also, one chick in high school had rumors go around about her having a 70s bush. This led to her suddenly interrupting chemistry class to stand on her desk and scream, "I don't have a ducking 70s bush," then drop trow and reveal her assets to the entire class, teacher and all. Ironically, her it poofed out like her afro as she indeed had a 70s bush. This short ass kid thought he was Barney for a week and was chasing kids. Pleasured himself to the childbirth video in junior high. He would at random, and for absolutely no reason, sing the McDonald's bar da 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 da, I'm loving it, very loudly in class. It wouldn't matter what we were doing at the time. It wouldn't matter what the situation. He would just belt it out at random. I thought he might have mild Tourette's, but never found out. It really didn't help that his last name was Bush, which the bullies in class immediately recognized as being very close to douche. So he was instantly named ex-douche. I tried to make friends with him as a TA once, but he was just so unpleasant that I couldn't. He asked creepy questions about the older girls I knew and he got fixated on talking about guns since he had seen me with my dad at a gun store. Something I didn't talk about in school. The last week of class the bullies got together and bought what must have been a crate of douches and stacked them on his desk. I was late to class or I would have stopped them. When I walked in he was staring at all the douches sitting on his desk, and when someone went to take them down he lost his it, flipped the desk over, screamed, and ran out of the room, out the gates of the school, and I didn't see him the rest of the day. Real talk. Thought he was going to shoot up the school and told the teacher and the vice principal as much. Named the bullies involved. Never saw him again. Two main ones that come to mind. 1. Not so bad one. He ate a full container of Heinz ketchup. 2. The really bad one. He claimed to have had a threesome with his mom and sister and no one believed him. Until he showed everyone pictures.